Venezuela's acting president Delcy Rodriguez received the victims of political violence at the Miraflores Palace as part of the actions being implemented following the approval of the amnesty law for democratic coexistence. In this context, the Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Council, Larry DeVoe, drew attention to the presence of victims and families of victims of episodes of politically motivated violence. The aim of this meeting is to address the situation of those affected under the newly established legal framework designed to promote national reconciliation. Let's recall the amnesty law, which was unanimously approved by the Venezuelan parliament, constitutes a historic event for the nation and is intended to promote pluralism and peace. In this scenario, acting President Delcy Rodriguez warned that some sectors misinterpret the amnesty law as a political defeat and assured that in the events of January 3rd, all of Venezuela lost.
I have to be grateful because I have seen extremist people genuinely welcoming the amnesty law.
De saludo a la ley de amnistía, de saludo al proceso de convivencia democrática. Pero también,
and the process of democratic coexistence.
Y le digo, las puertas de Venezuela, los brazos del pueblo de Venezuela están abiertos.
But I also want to tell you that the doors of Venezuela, the arms of the Venezuelan people, are open to those who wish to return in this process of healing hatred.
Tengo conocimiento de algunos sectores.
However, I must also say that I am aware of some sectors that are not correctly interpreting what is happening in the country, viewing it through the lens of partisan political defeat. On January 3rd, Venezuela lost. On January 3rd, all Venezuelan men and women lost. We all lost. There were no winners in this country, and I am seeing that some sectors are misinterpreting the amnesty law and the coexistence process.
Colombian President Gustavo Petro warned on Monday about the risks of electoral fraud less than 2 weeks before the legislative elections. The president has confirmed that citizens' personal data must be in the hands of the state and not of private entities. This warning comes after the company Thomas Gregg & Sons, owned by the Felipe Fernando and Camilo Bautista brothers, has once again been awarded the contract through a public tender according to the registry for the logistics of the upcoming election process. In this context, the historical pact sectors have also insisted that public control mechanism over electoral processes must be strengthened.
Si no hay impugnaciones en la mesa,
if there are no challenges at the polling station, the judges do not count the votes. They do not open the ballot boxes afterwards, and only the election witness can challenge the results.
Luego, si ustedes juntan el software de ADS call center,
then, if you combine the ADS call center software for preliminary counting with the judges, who cannot open the ballot boxes, and with the electoral witnesses, it turns out that the Electoral Council, especially the registry, limits the number of electoral witnesses, which should be 123,000 per party.
Que deberían ser 123,000 por partido.
If that does not happen, the parties cannot challenge the results, and then the fraud in the preliminary count carried out by ADS remains valid, because the ballot boxes are not reopened unless they have been challenged. And that is how fraud is carried out in Colombia.
The operation against the Jalisco New Generation cartel that led to the death of its leader Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes alias El Mencho triggered a digital disinformation campaign orchestrated by the far right. Mexican and international analysts agreed that beyond a few journalistic errors, there was evidence of a coordinated pattern of disinformation driven by very specific accounts serving the Mexican right wing. Fake images manipulated with artificial intelligence reported the attack on the city's airport and the transfer of President Sheinbaum by helicopter to a warship, which never happened. They even use images of protests by the so-called Generation Z that took place in 2025 in Nepal. Media analysts denounced that the systematic strategy of the right wing used both media figures and specific accounts that created a digital apparatus capable of amplifying fear and turning disinformation into a political weapon. During the Chinese New Year, a record-breaking level of travel was recorded in what is known as the largest human migration on the planet, with an estimated 400 million people traveling within China. Our correspondent Bruno Falchi brings us more details.
Greetings, comrades. I am in Beijing now to report that a record numbers of trips have been recorded during the Chinese New Year, known in the country as the Spring Festival. According to the data from the Ministry of Transport, the period known as the Chunyun is the largest annual human migration on the planet and exceeded 9 billion interregional trips in the weeks surrounding the holiday. This figure marks a new height and reflects the continuous strengthening of the Chinese domestic market. In one of the busiest days, more than 350 million trips were recorded in just 24 hours. The majority of the trips were made by road, while the high-speed rail system and the civil aviation also operate in unprecedented levels. The Spring Festival is the most important celebration for the Chinese families, where millions of migrant workers return to their hometowns to reunite with their loved ones, which involves a massive logistical operation inputs the country transportation infrastructure to the test. Beyond the cultural component, the massive increase of travels is driving consumer domestic tourism and trade, becoming a key indicator of the economic dynamism of the Chinese New Year. With this news, we return with you in the studios.
And now we go to Brazil, where Supreme Court begins Tuesday the trial of politicians accused of ordering the 2018 murder of Rio de Janeiro councilwoman Marielle Franco. The top federal court will not try former federal lawmaker Chiquinho Brassau and his brother, former state lawmaker Domingos, who are accused of ordering the assassination. The two former military police officers who carried out the murders were given hefty jail terms in 2024. Marielle Franco was an activist who grew up in a favela and became an outspoken critic of Rio's powerful militia groups. She was gunned down in the city center alongside her driver, Anderson Gomez. According to the prosecution, the accuser's motive was Franco's opposition to plans that would have legalized land illegally seized by militias that control large parts of the city. Dominican Republic authorities announced that the national interconnected electricity system has recovered 80% of its generating capacity after the disruption that left part of the country without power on Monday. According to the third bulletin issued by the Ministry of Energy and Mines, significant progress has been made in stabilizing the grid, allowing new provinces such as Higüey, La Romana, Nahua, and Valverde to once again have electricity. The note informs that substations are powered and the transmission system has been restored, although some power plants are still completing the charging process. It also assured that technical terms continue to work hard to achieve total normalization of service throughout the national territory. The Chinese Spring Festival is establishing itself as a cultural event with global reach. This year, more than 1 million foreign visitors came to the country to experience its tradition firsthand. Our correspondent Bruno Falchi brings us more details.
Greetings, comrades. I am in Beijing now to inform you that the Spring Festival, known internationally as the Chinese New Year, is not only the China's most important celebration, but also has become a cultural event shared and enjoyed by people all over the world. This year, the holiday coincided with 9 days of celebration and around 1,300,000 foreign visitors traveled the country to experience its tradition firsthand. The foreign minister's spokesperson, Mao Ning, explained the significance of the growing international participation.
马年春节恰逢9天长假，中国大江南北。
The Spring Festival this year, which ushered in the Year of the Horse, coincided with a 9-day holiday, and the entire country was filled with joy, peace, and family reunion. Many foreign friends came to China to visit temple fairs, make dumplings, and ride Spring Festival couplets, immersing themselves in the Chinese New Year atmosphere and experiencing a digital holiday that blends tradition and technology. Through the Spring Festival, they gain a sense of the Chinese way of life and learn about the harmonious, inclusive, and diverse Chinese culture. The Spring Festival is not only a traditional Chinese festival, but has also become a globally shared cultural event. The joyous and celebratory Spring Festival signifies China's steady and prosperous future and will bring boundless vitality to the world.
Data from travel platforms shows that in the 2 weeks leading up to the Spring Festivals, flight bookings to China increased by more than 400% compared to the previous years, reflecting the unprecedented international interest. Among these, 460,000 visitors entered the country under visa-free policies, a significant increase following the expansion of visa-free entry programs. The Chinese New Year, which began in February 17 and marks the start of the Year of the Horse, symbolized China's prosperity and stability, projecting its cultural vitality to the world. This news from here, the Chinese capital. We go back with you in the studios.
And in the United States, President Donald Trump is expected to try to justify 30 months of controversial policies during the upcoming State of the Union speech. Our correspondent Henry Camelo has more.
Hello, greetings to you and the teleSUR audience. In the midst of the second government shutdown of Donald Trump's second presidential term, tonight he will address Congress and millions of Americans, among whom, according to the most recent polls, he continues to lose support and even more so, trust. The latest surveys show President Trump's approval ratings below 34%, and among Latinos, they have fallen from 44% to just 25%, the lowest approval rating any president has ever had in U.S. history. According to the allies and critics, Trump will attempt to justify 13 months of accelerated immigration regulation, a record number of executive actions, and massive staff cuts in federal agencies, as well as a fierce crackdown on immigrants, a stagnant, low-growth economy, the Supreme Court's legal setback that declared the imposition of global tariffs without congressional approvals illegal, and of course, what analysts consider the crowning achievement of Donald Trump's presidency, the global scandal surrounding the alleged involvement and close relationship with the deceased convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Trump continues to deny his involvement despite several emails revealed in the Epstein files directly implicating him in these criminal activities. Many Americans expect Trump to continue boasting about his administration's supposed triumphs in economy, immigration, and foreign policy matters, which have provoked the rejection of millions of citizens who since the beginning of his presidency have not stopped peacefully protesting in the streets of the country's major cities. The speech will be televised at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on most television stations across the country. We will, of course, be closely following President Trump's address to bring you the best analysis, reactions, and all the details of this State of the Union speech. This is the information I have from New York. Back to you in the studio.
Venezuela's acting president Delcy Rodriguez received the victims of political violence at the Miraflores Palace as part of the actions being implemented following the approval of the amnesty law for democratic coexistence. In this context, Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Council, Larry DeVoe, drew attention to the